Joining me in the studio is Terry Stanfield to tell us a little bit more about 211. And Terry, you were saying that over 50% of the calls you're getting now are people who've never accessed the service.
Absolutely. Prior to the economy in the situation that we're in now, the majority were individuals who know about other social services. But the calls that we're getting now are people who do not even know where to begin. They know that they need to pay their mortgage payment, or they need to get information on foreclosure prevention, etc., but they don't know exactly where to call, so they're dialing 211.
Is it easier then maybe to make a phone call as opposed to having to come into a social service agency where you've never been before and you might be embarrassed?
Absolutely, and that's what we're finding. It's very, very comfortable. If I've just lost my job and I need to put food on the table, I need to look for a job, I need to be retrained. But it's a lot easier for me to just dial the phone, 211, and ask for referrals to organizations that would be able to assist me. It's a lot easier than just going in at cold.
Can you explain, some people get frustrated, there's a limit on 3 referrals per call. Why is that?
Because on average, we receive over 350 calls a day. And so if we were to spend, 8 minutes as an example with 4, 5, 6 referrals, we're not going to be able to help that person that's waiting. And so what we try to do is we hope that they are going to get help with the 3 calls. If they do not, then they can call us back. One of the things, too, is we ask every caller, if you don't get help, please call us back, or we're not going to know not to refer the next person to that call. And then our operators do call every day. They call 3% of the calls that they received for that day to call back and say, were you able to get assistance, or do I need to give you another referral?
Okay. Sometimes, too, people are saying they can't get through 211 on their cell phones.
Right, and that has nothing to do with Nevada 211. What that is that's the provider, and we always say if you're having difficulty getting in through 211, or you could dial 211 and you end up in another state, please call your cellular provider, because it has nothing to do with us. They need to get connected into the 211 system.
Okay, tell me this. In the story, Jay mentioned that you were bringing counselors in for your operators. Has that happened, and what was the result?
Yes, we are finding our operators really needed help themselves. When they have that person who has never had to worry, they've had jobs for 15, 20, 30 years, whatever, and they're the ones that are calling, they're emotional. What was happening is our operators couldn't let go of that. They were becoming emotional, and they were so concerned for that caller. And so what we decided is that we wanted to bring in some experts to work with the callers so that they know how to handle those calls, and they can leave them at the office and not take them home. Because a lot of these individuals, they have family members that are in the same boat, or their own spouse has lost their job. So it does become very emotional for them.
Yeah, I think people don't remember that even during these hard economic times that the people who are giving help sometimes need help themselves.
Absolutely.
All right, I want to thank you for being with us. And again, Nevada 211, anywhere in Nevada, will connect you with the resources you need. Las Vegas has already gained national attention as the foreclosure capital of the U.S. Now, according to a local attorney, we're also the scam capital. As Jay Jonas explains, in desperate times, too often homeowners are taking desperate actions.
Julio Palomo and his housemate Yvonne Valdez are, at the moment, preparing for the worst but hoping for the best. Palomo thought he was doing the right thing when, last fall, he paid a woman $500 plus 1 month's mortgage, another $1,400, in an attempt to get his house payments reduced. All he got was an eviction notice.
I waiting for the bank call me or get some statements or something for the bank or notice something. I never get anything. So the last time one man walked by my door and say, this is the your house being sold to somebody else. You have to leave.
They came knocking at the door and gave him a 3-day notice and said his house had been sold.
Palomo turned to the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada for help. Attorney Michael Joe says such scams are all too common.
And we see it all the time. I think it's like the only growth business in Las Vegas right now is doing loan modification and scamming people. So we always tell people to be really careful, because there are a lot of agencies that would do it for free.
Joe is trying various tactics to keep Palomo in his home, saying he did nothing wrong, other than trust the wrong person.
The number one thing to look for, if they're asking for money, that ought to set off bells in your head, that you shouldn't have to pay money up front. In terms of if you're in foreclosure, you're supposed to be, you're not supposed to take any money until you've actually performed services, and you're supposed to be a registered foreclosure consultant. And I think that when people are asking for money up front, it ought to make you suspicious.
Palomo found the woman who offered to help at a booth inside this indoor swap meet. Yes, it sounds like a strange place to seek mortgage assistance, but his lawyer is not surprised.
I think it's two things. One is they're desperate. I mean, their home is really important to them, and that they're desperate to try to keep it. And the other thing that causes people to fall victim is that they're trusting. And I think that when someone says they're going to save their home for them, one, they're desperate about saving their home, and two, they're trusting. That combination generally results in a situation where they end up being scammed.
And they shouldn't be taking advantage. I mean, it's already hard enough times, and then people scamming people. You know, people work hard for what they got. He's busted his ass to keep this place. And now, you know, because of her, I don't know.
While Valdez and Palomo remain in legal limbo, Michael Joe hopes some simple advice may help other people from living the same nightmare.
The first thing they should do is they should call their lender. And the lender will, if most lenders have a program, and the program will, if you qualify, it will give you some form of loan modification or some sort of loan forbearance. And if you can do that, that's probably the best thing. The second thing is, if you're having difficulty doing that, then you should pick the phone up and call Consumer Credit Counseling or call HUD and get a referral from them.
Jay Jones, Recession Rx.
Joining us in the studio is the chairperson of the Nevada Fight Fraud Task Force. And Elizabeth, let me ask you, we're all getting this mail. Call now, avoid foreclosure, we guarantee it. Mm-hmm. What's the deal?
Well, the fact is there are some companies out there that are legitimate companies that are genuinely offering quality services to folks. But the reality is that in this environment there are a lot of scammers who are taking advantage of people. And anytime you see something that says guaranteed, particularly in the case of a loan modification, you want to be very wary of working with those folks.
Why can't they guarantee loan modifications?
There is nothing statewide in state law or federally that forces banks to modify their contracts with borrowers. Even in the president's most recently released stimulus plan, he offers incentives to the banks to work with borrowers to modify their loans, but there's nothing that forces them to do that. There's not a guarantee that a bank will modify the loan to meet your new requirements.
So what are you suggesting? People see a housing counselor then?
Yes. Actually, we do recommend that they work with a HUD-approved housing counselor, and that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, they go through a certain degree of training with HUD. They have to complete a very detailed application process, which means that they have the education that you need to work with you on a number of levels, not just with your bank for your mortgage, but other kinds of housing services, as well as other budget issues that you may be facing. Their services are free to borrowers. Often in a situation like this, a borrower's down to their last few $100s or maybe a few thousand. And if they're spending it with one of these fraudulent companies, they're out that last bit of money they have and they don't get the services they need. Working with a housing counselor, they can go ahead and get the services they need for free, although those services should not be undervalued due to that. Sometimes people equate free with poor service. That's not the case. The counselors are funded otherwise. It's free to the borrower. They can get those services, and then they can get the help that they need with other types of issues that they may be facing, because as you may be aware, a lot of times it's not just that their mortgage rate has adjusted. They've had an ARM and it's adjusted to a higher interest rate than expected. They may have lost their jobs, become underemployed, working only part-time. They may have had a medical situation happen that's affecting their finances. And a housing counselor can help them with all of those issues, not just their mortgage situation.
Right, because the people who are guaranteeing that we can save your house, in some cases that may not be the road to go down.
Exactly, exactly. Unfortunately, a lot of people are so upside down or their finances are so challenged that they may not be able to stay in their homes. And we certainly hate to say something like that. Nobody wants to think that they'll have to give up their homes, but the reality is that they may have to. And a housing counselor can also help them with the transition into the next phase, renting perhaps.
Okay, and I know you worked on the mortgage task force, and we've got the homeowner's guide on our website for foreclosure.
Yes.
I want to thank you very much. And right now, we gave you the latest numbers for the task force.